really annoys him.
You think
Everything.
You think it's because I view history with 21st century values.
You think Mr. Sharp complains about us? Probably.
He's nothing but
Oh, yeah. Caleb.
Warren
Caleb,
actually-
she's been quiet lately. No, she's never. It's that, it's because she
Okay,
asked.
okay, pause your freaking out. We gotta do claps. All right. Hi, everybody. So I'm gonna repeat a few things just in case were coming in and didn't hear me or whatever. Once again, if you'll take out a piece of notebook paper, that's where we're gonna keep our Cornell notes for today. If you owe me a permission slip for the writer's workshop, I would love to take that from you. And remember that if you're not going, I still would love that back that says that you're not going, or even a sticky note with your name on it that says you're not going. Anything at all that I will remember to look at so that I know what's going on. And especially if you are going, I really need that permission slip. Next Tuesday is that writer's workshop when you will be joining me for some of your class periods potentially to work on your outline. And next Thursday is the deadline for that outline and your 40 sources. And I'm going to talk today about how to submit those, and I'm also going to talk about feedback from your first 20 sources. We good so far? All right, so let me briefly talk about what you're going to turn in and how you're going to turn it in, and then I'll talk about a whole lot of feedback that I have for you. So we just said that Thursday, anybody, what's the date on Thursday, the 14th?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So December 14th is when this is due. You already have everything you need for your outline, including a place to submit it in Google Classroom, as well as notes and examples of what I want it to look like. For the 40 sources, here's what I would like to do. For like literally all of you except maybe 2 that I just didn't have time to get to this afternoon, I returned your document in Google Classroom that has your first 20. Okay, I've sent that back to you with feedback. Now, a few of you I haven't yet, and I'll talk to you individually. And it's not anything to do with you, it's just because I got caught up dealing with some situations and didn't finish. But I'm going to return that document to you. But here's my thinking. I don't want you to have to turn that document back in right before the break, because I don't know how long it's going to take me to grade it. And then if you've turned it in via Classroom, you can't edit it, which means you can't be working on it over the break. And that's no good. So what I'm going to do is in Google Classroom, I'm going to post an announcement. I may do it as an assignment, I'm not sure how that's going to work yet, but basically I'm going to post a place in the classroom where I want you to simply give me the link to your document. Because if you give me the link to your document that has all your 40 sources, I can still go in and grade it and see what you've worked on, but you can still go in and continue to work on it. Does that make sense? Virginia, does that make sense?
Yeah, I thought you could work on it without us submitting it, like with comments.
All I know is that like once you turn in a doc, you can't edit it until I return it back to you. So I was trying to avoid that.
Is it the same for you, is what I'm wondering? Like, until we've returned it, you can't do anything with our document?
I think if you give me the link with editing rights, I can, but that's a good question. We might have to do a test run.
Okay.
So after you return it, you can't see our documents anymore at all?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Because then you have to almost like resubmit.
Google Classroom, right?
Yeah.
If it's like linked in and like assigned by person, if you put the doc into the assignment, so it assigns based on each person, you can still go into each one of those and see all of them, even if they're not turned in.
Okay, and that's it. That's what I did with the thesis statement. I'm still learning this Google Classroom stuff. Okay, good to know.
Pretty switch.
When you do share this document with me, guys, make sure you give me editing rights. I say that, and yet one of you is going to not do that, and then I won't be able to grade it. Make sure you give me editing rights. I promise I won't ruin your stuff. Okay?
I forgot how to do that.
When you go into share, it'll say, you know, this person can view, this person can comment, this person can edit. Just give me edit.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so let me talk to you about your first 20 sources. Like I said, I tried desperately to get through all of them. I made it through all but like 2 this afternoon. So I'm gonna do those like first thing tomorrow and make sure I return those to the 2 of you that are missing them. A few of you, I have like individual questions for you, but I'll come around at the end of class and make sure I clarify with you what we're doing, because a few of you changed topics or turned them in late, but we talked about why they were late, and I just need to make sure I have that in my notes. But as far as feedback, I put a bunch of comments on the ones I've graded so far, and I'm going to continue doing that with the others I still have to go. But there are some general errors that basically everyone across the board needs to be aware of and may or may not be making. First of all, in general, now you can go too far to this extreme, but in general, act as if the reader does not know what you're talking about. Because some of you are writing statements and using a lot of pronouns, and you're saying things like, this source is about how they got really upset with their enemies for being so violent during that time. Who? What time? What event are we talking about? Whose enemies? You know, like give me some details. Pretend like I don't know what you're talking about. Okay? Act as if the reader doesn't know. The reader doesn't know who they are. The reader doesn't know what it is. So give me some of those good details. Verb choice. And I realize why this happened. One of the questions, one of your 2 questions said something like, what does this source bring to your research? And a lot of you are using that verb bring. And I know it's in the question, so you're just rephrasing the question, but you're saying things like, this source brings me information about the Cold War. Well, a source is not an animate object. It can't bring you something, right? Same thing with the verb tells or talks. This article talks about, can an article talk?
No.
No, so we need better verbs. So don't use verbs like bring, tell, talks, because technically speaking, that's not quite accurate. Now you'll see this being used, and there are times when it works, but I know when I was in college and I was writing essays, I got...
So describe and like explain.
Yes, good. Use words like describes, explains, provides. Now, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking because I used to argue with my college professors about this. You're saying, well, if a source can't talk, how does a source describe? Right? I get it. I totally get it. All I know is that these ones are good and these ones are bad. Yep. So just think about what verbs you're using. Yeah.
Isn't it like the difference between action verbs and like, I can't remember what the other term is, but
Passive?
yeah, something like that.
It can be. Kind of just depends. It just depends. And it's a picky detail. I just know that my college papers always got marked up for stuff like this. You know, articles can't talk, so don't say the article talks about. So I'm just passing that insight along to you.
Articles can't explain. This article's not gonna sit me down and explain it to me.
I agree. I agree 110%. I don't know what to tell you. Page numbers. Some of you are taking, now this is about the notes section, and I didn't grade the notes section, but I did notice that some of you are taking notes from books and you're not including page numbers. You've got to have those page numbers in your notes because they've got to be in your paper. Okay, so just a reminder, if you're taking notes from a book, you must include page numbers. I've made a whole list of things I'm going through right now. Let's see what else we got. before you start revising your first 20 sources, I would recommend that you read all of my comments. Because I think what you'll start to see is you'll start to see some patterns in some of my comments that I'm telling you to do and in some of the mistakes that you may be making. And once you've identified what the overall source of error is, I think you'll have a much easier time fixing it. So for some of you, over and over and over and over again, I put be specific, be more specific. No, for real though, I'm gonna need you to be specific, okay? For some of you, over and over and over I put, you already said this. You wrote the exact same thing about the other source. You said this exact sentence about source number 3, and now you're saying it again about source number 15. Some of you are just copying and pasting, and some of you are saying things that are really vague. Like, this source will help me with my paper because it gives me more information about my topic. Guys, of course it gives you more information about your topic. They all give you more information about your topic. So that's not enough, okay? You've got to give me a lot more than that. Yes?
So about the other problem, we have a lot of sources that do the same thing on their paper.
Yep.
So how do we word that?
Choose a different word.
Well, I mean, yeah, you can look for synonyms, certainly. But I totally know your point, and this is a good point. We need to talk about this. With 40 sources, chances are some of them are doing the same thing for you, right? Some of them are giving you an overview of the topic. Some of them are giving you context about the topic. So you can say some similar things, but sometimes it's like you've literally copied and pasted a whole paragraph or a whole sentence, you've just replaced one word. And then other times, Virginia, like, really the bigger problem is just being really vague and saying something like, this helps me with my paper because it tells me more about my topic.
So is it okay if we're like redundant in some areas?
In some areas, absolutely. But instead of saying it tells me more about my topic, okay, what about it? Because if it really doesn't do anything different for you, then you don't really technically need it in your paper. And a few of you, and I laughed, it was cute, I laughed, but a few of you even went so far as to say things like, this source helps make my paper longer. Or this source is useful because it gives me an extra source.
Oh no.
That's true, but we don't tell people that. Okay, don't put that in writing. You don't want that, okay? It does make your paper longer. That's not really what we're going for. Make sense? Okay. I need to erase this so I can put some more stuff on the board. Are you good? Okay. And it's hard, guys. I know it's hard. I struggled with this when I was in school. Different teachers will tell you to do it different ways. It does get kind of redundant. I get it. I totally get it. Oh, okay, so I wrote another quote, just as another example. Somebody said, and please understand, it's different people in the room doing different things. I am in no way trying to call out, one or two people. It's everybody, or I wouldn't bother to go over it. But somebody said something like, this helps me because I can put facts in my paper. It's not that dramatic, Haley.
I like doing it.
I can tell.
Every single one.
You said what? No, but for real, this helps me because I can put facts in my paper. If you're not putting facts in your paper, what are you putting in your paper? Lies?
Opinions?
Fake news? I don't know. So, think about that. Okay. This will help. At least I hope this will help. Can't spell. Okay, remember why. Remember why we have annotated bibliographies. What does that do for you? Yeah.
Okay, back to the redundant thing.
No. My question. Go back to that in a second. Yeah, why do we do annotated bibliographies? Virginia.
That's a good one.
Okay, so that other people can look at where you got your research from and prove that it's credible and also do research of their own.
And also what?
So that they can do research of their own.
Yes. The reason we have bibliographies is to show the reader where you got your information so that they know that it's true. They know that it's credible. They know that they can go look that up somewhere. The reason we annotate bibliographies is for future research. So if you write a paper on the Cold War and you have 40 sources, and I'm doing a paper, but my paper is not on the Cold War, but it is on the Soviet Union during that time period, I want to read through your annotations and figure out which of your sources might talk about the Soviet Union during that time period as opposed to the Cold War in general. So I'm using your descriptions to figure that out. So when you're writing these annotations, keep reminding yourself why you're doing it. Right? You're doing it so that if someone read that, they would know exactly what that source is about. And they would know if that source is going to be useful to them or not. I think what I will do is I think I will go back to, and a lot of people had really good ones. I mean, almost everybody in the room, I highlighted at least one and put, this is a great one. This is a really good answer, a really good entry. You know, I think what I'll do is I'll go back to some of y'all's and grab some of those really good ones and like post them in Google Classroom for examples. Let me make a note of myself to do that. Okay. And, okay, I want to point out two grammatical things that a lot of people are having problems with, okay? One is the issue of not writing a complete sentence. I wrote down this is yours.
But it's easier to read out the wrong than it is to have a complete sentence. But,
So here's an example.
Sure.
Now, I'll show you the sentence that came before it, and I think you'll understand why that student made that mistake, okay? Because the sentence that came before it is, so the student wrote, this source shows details of the conflict, period. How it was violent and lasted a long time. Now the problem is that this is not a sentence.
For example, like.
Okay, good. So there's a lot of things you could do to fix this, right? It's actually a super easy fix.
Yeah.
You could say, for example,
Couldn't you put a colon?
how it was violent and lasted a long time. You could put a colon, which makes this a part of that sentence. You could take that period away. This source shows details of the conflict, like how it was violent and lasted a long time. Or put a period here. Just take that part out. Do you see how there's lots and lots of different ways? Do you see why this is not a sentence?
What's the subject?
Exactly. Where are the subject and the verb? If this is the subject, and these are the verbs, this is the thing that screws it up. This is the thing that tells the reader that it's not a complete sentence. So you gotta kind of fix that somehow. And a lot of people were making those mistakes in other ways. Another mistake that's very, very common. And I'll just go ahead and give you, well, no, I won't. No, I won't. Hal is in a mood today. All right, look at that sentence. This source is about the event as well as using data to show details.
It's not parallel.
It's not parallel. There's no parallelism.
It's also very
Well,
vague.
I was thinking big, yeah.
Well, it's also really vague. It is really vague. And I will tell you that I made this a little more vague than it was in reality because I didn't want to put the topic in the sentence because then everyone knows whose sentence it is. So I was trying to find a way to show you an example without like calling people out. But you're right, it is super vague.